now I would like to make a short introduction. I'm really proud that we have excellent participants now in our panel discussion, and they are from Verbio. This is a big, I mean, Europe's biggest biogas and biofuel producer. That we have. Then we have the company Neste from Finland with subsidiaries all over the world. We have Groupe Renault. What I'm very proud about that also Groupe Renault is here in our discussion, as well as CNH Industrial. This is a very this is the industrial part of it's a conglomerate company with a strong truck manufacturer like Iveco, very famous and with a strong contribution to gaseous vehicles. And last but not least, of course, our consultants from Frontier Economics will take part. And each participant, each speaker will now have the possibility to introduce himself and the company to the audience. And after this, we will have the possibility to start our panel discussion. And I would like to start now with the Verbio AG. It's the largest biomethane supplier in Germany, and so far as I have learned, the only one in the world, the only company that has technologically mastered the production of biomethane from straw on an industrial scale. Verbio gas achieves CO2 savings up to 90%, and in addition, it avoids fine dust and nitrogen oxide pollutions. Verbio is not only active in Germany, it's active on other international markets, and heartily welcome now to Claus Sauter. He's the CEO and a main shareholder of the Verbio AG. And I have to admit, in Germany, he's also well known for his sometimes straightforward attacks to the politicians in Berlin with his blog, Smart Like Straw. We call it Strohklug in German language, smart like straw. And the people at Verbio are really smart, and they know about biological processes. And now I would like to give the floor to Claus Sauter for his introduction. Claus, please.
Thank you very much, Jens. I also appreciate joining this conference today, and I like the presentation. Something about Verbio. Verbio is biofuel and technology. So my background is I'm farmer's son. I started trading with biodiesel in '95. So I'm something like dinosaur in this industry. But we are also producing biodiesel and bioethanol. But since 2010, our main focus is biomethane, or renewable natural gas, how it's called in the US. So please move to the next slide. So after the food versus fuel discussion started in 2010, we developed a technology to make biomethane, renewable natural gas, from pure grain straw. This first big-scale plant, what we built in East Germany, was supported by the European Union. It was co-founded by the NER 300 program. And there we are really using pure straw. It's a mono fermentation. We have already 2 plants existing, very efficient process. And we would like to roll it out, but our development is harmed, as Søren mentioned it already, by the few and let's say the concentration in Brussels on mainly electrification of the transport sector. So the next slide. The process is very efficient. We need 4 balls of straw to run a mid-class car 1 year. 4 balls of straw is 2 tons. We started at a very early stage to bring our biomethane to filling stations. We have big scale effects. All plants are around 20 megawatt thermal capacity. And yeah, there were some questions. So I would say the direction from the study is okay, but we are even better than your expectations for renewable natural gas. So as I said, the process is very efficient, and the CO2 savings right now are even higher than what you have in your presentation. So until 2019, we had a 90% market share with renewable natural gas at the filling stations, and we were at 124 filling stations all over Germany. Next slide. So there was a question how the negative contribution from renewable natural gas came. And Amber answered correctly. That is mainly coming from manure. But a lot has to do with regulation. So when we are using straw, you must know that 80% of the straw in Europe, in the average, is not used. It's left on the fields and it's digesting there. So 1,000 kilogram, 1 metric ton of straw causes 1,349 kilogram CO2 and maybe some amount of CH4. So to use biomethane is really avoiding CO2 emissions in the agriculture sector. So we are much better, but right now the legislation in Germany is not reflecting these kind of CO2 savings. So if we make a fair calculation, and I think it's easy to follow my explanation. So if we are using 1 ton of straw, 1,000 kilogram, we are avoiding 1,349 kilogram CO2 emission in transport, in the agriculture. Then we are producing 2.3 megawatt hours, which is 8,280 megajoule. This is enough fuel 6 months for a mid-class car. So in the overall process, we are saving 1,830 kilogram CO2 savings. Next slide. So there I have a scheme. And the scheme is, again, we take the straw from the fields, because even from a farmer's son perspective, we also have to ensure the sustainability in agriculture. So we have to bring carbon back. So only the cellulose and the hemicellulose is transferred into renewable natural gas, 8,280 megajoule. And in our process also, CO2 is built. So 315 kilogram of CO2 emissions. What is left over is all the important fertilizer components for agriculture and the lignin. So what we are doing, we bring 2,100 kilogram biofertilizer back to agriculture, which is 100 kilogram of carbon, and what is needed for sustainable agriculture. So also from an agriculture point of view, not only producing a renewable fuel, we also have to ensure that everything in agriculture goes well. Next slide. And finally, what we also have to take into account, today all the discussion about renewable hydrogen is based on the fact that it is coming from electrolysis. This is a similar development as I saw when we were implementing the tank-to-wheel approach, because the tank-to-wheel approach is nothing more than a clear statement for electrification. Something like this is also happening now with renewable hydrogen. If somebody today needs hydrogen in an industrial process, it is made from methane. So the process is the steam methane reforming reaction. So you take the methane, CH4, and finally you get 4 molecules of hydrogen. So also here I see more and more the fact that Europe is going to electrification. And all the arguments from the presentation about costs, finally I got the feeling that this doesn't matter anymore. So the question what I raise finally is it about decarbonization of the industry, of the transport, or is it about electrification? Because defining, and Søren mentioned it, I think the best way and to find the best solution is not that some politicians are defining a technology. They should define the target, and the target should be decarbonization combined with the rules around to achieve this target. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to some questions at the end.
Thank you, Klaus. From my perspective, you belong to the top list where the next participant is already, and he is there since 15 years. The company is called Neste. To powertrain guys like me, very well known. Neste is placed 4th place on the global 100 list of the world's most sustainable companies. Hey, this is our participant here, and I really appreciate this. Neste has been on this list for longer, as far as I know, than any other company of the energy industry. And by the way, the best car manufacturer is Tesla, ranked position 97, as far as I know, came from 74. And I'm really excited that Mats Hultman, he's head of OEM partnership at Neste, takes part in our video conference. He is a powertrain guy, as I learned, and he's been with AVL and GM Powertrain Sweden, also with VAP, and heartily welcome from my side. And please introduce yourself and your company.
Yes, thank you, Jens. So, yeah, and thanks for inviting us, and thanks for the really good discussions and presentations so far. Really enjoyed it. So my name is Mats Hultman. I work with OEM partnerships and at innovation and R&D at Neste, and I've been also heading our well-to-wheel initiatives, which connects very well to what we are talking about here today. So. Since maybe not all of you know Neste, I'll just give you some short words before I go into more about our view on these topics. And Neste is the world's largest producer of renewable diesel and jet fuel made from waste and residue. And renewable diesel, that's also known as HVO to some of you. And we produce at 3 different sites globally here, so in Finland, in Rotterdam, and in Singapore. We see that we are the biggest producer, but we see more and more coming into this field. So currently today in the world, there's about 8 million tons of HVO being produced, and we see that expected to grow to about 30 million tons by 2025. And we have also started a new business area, which is renewable polymer and chemicals, where we will process waste plastics also for the plastic industry. So we're really committed to the renewable production. And our product is sold globally, and we have about 500 stations where you can buy Neste My renewable diesel, but it's also used as a blending component in many countries. And it's also used as a sort of depot deliveries to fleet owners and so on. And it has a greenhouse gas reduction of up to 90%. But if we go into the presentation here, if we go to the next slide, we can have a look at. I think this picture matches very well what we've been talking about here today. about the tank-to-wheel versus the well-to-wheel perspective. And of course, the environment cares about the total emissions, not only the tailpipe. And as Søren and others mentioned, the regulation is currently up for review. So now is a really good time to affect this type of legislation. And we all often get the question, but we have electric vehicles, why do we need other options? And if we go to the next slide, that's sort of our attempt to answer this. If you look at the dark blue box, that's representing all the fossil oil used in the world today. And the light blue box then is all the oil being used for transport. And as you can see, this little white dot, that represents the current amount of electric vehicles we have on the road. That's about 8 million vehicles. And that will for sure improve. There's different projections. Some say we will have 330 million electric vehicles by 2040. But as you see, even if we double that, there's still a lot of fossil oil that needs to be replaced. But how about the renewable then? If we look on the left side, the bottom green box there on the left side, that's the amount of fossil fuel being replaced by biofuels in 2018 already. So we see that already now biofuel is making a big impact. But at Neste, we are also looking at new technology. We are expanding our renewable diesel production, but we're also looking into lignocellulosics, how we can grow that, and algae, and of course also looking into the power-to-X areas with e-fuels. And we have looked at different scenarios, and we see really that with the technology and the available raw materials, so on, we see that this type of low carbon fuels can really play an important role here in the future, as you can see on the sort of scale here on the different scenarios. And as mentioned before, also we need all of these solutions, and we need to exploit them to the maximum. And to do that, we need a favorable regulation. So that's very clear, and I think it's been clear in the discussion here today. And I think this picture can also help when we get the question about ban of the combustion engine. There's a lot of talk about banning the combustion engine, and it's really, I would say, a big misunderstanding, because typically the people that say that, they really care for the environment. But they might not understand that by banning a combustion engine, you actually close the door for all these good alternatives, which are needed to replace this huge amount of fossil fuel. So I think this can be a way of explaining the need for both these alternatives, basically. So that was the short part I would like to share with you, and I also look forward to the discussion here.
Thank you very much, Mats. And now I go forward to the next participant. I'm really excited because this was not really expected from my side, but we have also Groupe Renault, a representative from Groupe Renault in our webinar today. Okay, Groupe Renault is doesn't need much explanation. And we all learned that the company is going through a strong transformation process towards sustainable mobility. And just last week, I was very impressed. They published a plan how to decarbonize, and we will come to this later. I would like now to introduce to you Catherine Girard. She's the expert leader for raw material and energy at Groupe Renault. She has been working also for Nissan. And a heartily welcome from my side, and please, your term now.
So thank you for your invitation. So as you mentioned, I'm expert leader on energy and raw material, and I'm working at the environmental corporate planning of the Groupe Renault. So I would like to thank you also for the presentation of the study, which present very valuable information concerning the impact of the GOCH4 on the environment. So I would like maybe to start my 5 minutes time by some comment on this study. Just 4 points. The first point is that globally we share the analysis concerning the ranking and the comparison when we talk about CO2. This presentation highlights the importance of the composition of biomethane when you talk about BioCH4. We do not have exactly the same impact because I think we don't have the same comparison. So this point is very important when we talk about BioCH4. The impact might be very different depending on the processes and sources of biomass we use. So this is the first point. My second comment is very interesting to compare different level of renewable fuel based on 100% of renewable fuel. 0% means fossil and a mix of both sources. So very interesting to have all this comparison. But it means that it will be also interesting to compare with the same logic and rationale with the BEV and using also green electricity, just to show exactly the same scope in terms of comparison. My third comment is the study is based on the C segment, so very interesting, and on a mix of European average. It's clear that if you talk about different level of battery in terms of kilowatt hour, if you talk about different country, the ranking of the hierarchy might be very different. If you talk about France or Germany, the ranking is a little bit different. If you take whether you take about CO2 or whether you take about production of TCO. And my last point was about cost, because the study worked on a global production cost. In our side, we mainly work and we mainly use the TCO, which is a total customer ownership, which is globally the pocket money of the customer. And by using this methodology, it means that we insist or we highlight the positive impact of the usage phase, because we calculate it on 3 years. So it's not only a one-shot calculation. And just to keep in mind that with this calculation, it means we increase the advantage of the CNG compared with the other vehicles. So just to give you and to be completely transparent on my comment. So TCO again push even higher the advantage of a CNG vehicle and bio-CNG vehicle. So it's quite a positive and valuable conclusion. So to sum up, concerning this study, we share globally the well-to-wheel impact and globally the hierarchy. Again, it's stress the importance to take into account the well-to-wheel, but also, and you mentioned that, the LCA, which is not calculated here, it's quite complex. Second point, yes, TCO, and when we compare the different level of the powertrain present, also advantages for the for the CNG and bio-CNG. Go back. No, it's not the slide, but okay. TCO present advantages if we compare with the different powertrain. It's clear. And the last point I wanted to mention about the report is the focus on trucks. You know that we are focusing on light duty vehicle. It means that globally up to 3.5 tons. So it's always interesting to have a global comparison with trucks because from the past we know that sometimes there is a snowball effect from the high duty vehicle to the light duty vehicle. So then I would like to draw your attention on our strategy. 2 weeks ago, our CEO communicated on our ambition, which is to reach to be carbon neutral in Europe in 2040 and neutral all around the world in 2050. So here we talk about global emissions. So it means we have to integrate in the global calculation the production of our car and also raw material impact in terms of production and in terms of logistics. Just keep in mind that today, when we talk about the carbon footprint, 85% is covered by what we call the well-to-wheel. So if you compare with the presentation or the study, 85% integrating usage, it means CO2 during from tank to wheel, and also 15% globally in terms of well-to-tank. So if you go to the next slide, so it's not a surprise for you if I tell you that on the next slide, if I tell you that so environmental responsibility is key. We have published for the first time our climate report. It was 2 weeks ago, so I encourage you to have a look on that. Our ambition today is clear, and you know that it's largely based on electrification, because we think that electrification might be the answer for many usage and many markets. But at the same time, we realize that it may not cover 100% of countries needed and of usage. So it's the reason why I'm here today. And because globally, in addition to the BEV, so 100% electrified vehicle, we also have a very look on the different level of electrification. It means HEV and PHEV, and also on other kind of what we call and what you cover. It means alternative energy. We are also deploying, investing some technology and some as gas, for example, hydrogen and LPG. Also, we have begun to commercialize some vehicle with a good success for LPG. When we talk about bio-CNG for us is very attractive, and it's just a summary of what we heard and what I explained previously. Advantages in terms of TCO, advantage in terms of autonomy if we compare with the BEV, advantage also with some specific assumption. It depends of what is the process and the country, but positive in terms of environmental footprint for the well-to-tank and the tank-to-wheel. Positive also in terms of availability. Why? Because bio-CNG is already there. It's based on nature process, so it's already available. And also it's positive when we have a look on the momentum in some country, in France, for example, but also in other countries in Europe. One of the reasons behind that is that it creates a positive impact on the global ecosystem. But in the same time, and I'm here also to share with you our concern, there are still some barriers and some roadblocks we have to keep in mind, or we have to follow. When we talk about CNG, what is important is to have durable and harmonized public support for all alternative energy. Why? Because you know that when we decided to invest in a new powertrain, it's million and billion of investment. So it's huge investment. So it means that we need to have visibility over the midterm and over the long term. And we need to have a clear idea of the evolution of supply and demand, and for example, access of guarantee of origin in all the different countries. And sometimes it's not so clear. Second point, infrastructure is also key, but it's an evidence. Third point is regulation. So regulation in terms of CO2 from the tank to wheel, but also well to wheel coverage, but also, and it's very important, I didn't heard the word of pollutant impact. You may know that now there is a new regulation which is under review and which will impact the level of emission. It is called the Euro 7. We are waiting for the final text in June. So here I put a red light, and I'm sorry for that. But the text, the current direction of this new regulation is very, very severe in terms of to adapt the technology. Why? Because in the new text that consider that CH4, so it means methane, but also azote, so N2O, are considered as green gas emission. And in addition to that, there is many very severe concerning emission for this pollutant, considered as pollutant, and other pollutants. So it means from a technological point of view, the challenge, I finish. The challenge will be huge. So I just would like to draw your attention on the fact that if we want to see a future on a CNG on vehicle, we have to work all together on this new regulation, because it may represent a burden on the future development on CNG. So globally, yes, we believe that there is opportunities on that. And again, if I am here today, it's just because we are convinced that CNG and bio-CNG present very good opportunities. We just have to be careful that we will be allowed to develop such kind of vehicle in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Catherine. We will surely discuss this in our panel discussion, and you opened so many fields for discussion. It's but this is what you are addressing is totally right, and this is why we came together here now today, because we have to send our messages to the authorities in Brussels. Next, I would like to introduce now Michele Ziosi. He is Vice President International Relations at CNH. That's a multinational corporation, and the best brand that is known is Iveco. Iveco is supporting methane as a fuel for many years. Iveco is a founding member of NGVA Europe. And please, Michele, your 5 minutes now for a quick introduction.
Thank you very much, Jens. Could you see me on the screen?
No, we don't see you, but we hear you only.
There is some issue with the camera, I think. Sorry for that. But if you don't mind, I will go ahead. So thank you very much for the invitation, Jens, and also to your team. And it's really great to be here together in this great panel. As you said, the CNH industry is a global corporation, leader in capital goods. We are producing and developing industrial machines for agricultural purpose, for road transportation. So we are moving people and goods, and we are also pretty much involved in the construction sector, and we are producing also engines. We all together, we are 65,000 people all around the world. Our revenues is about 28 billion of euro. Our footprint is in all 4 regions in the world. And we are also listed in New York and Milan. In terms of sustainability, we have been awarded for the 10th year in a row as a sustainability leader in our industrial sector. And certainly, this award comes from for the recognition in terms of the processes, manufacturing processes we are putting in place, but also from the product we are actually producing and selling to our final customer, and we are very proud of that. And certainly the role of gas and biomethane have played an important role in getting this award. As you said, we are a corporation which is actually has 12 brands. The one more involved in the gas sector are Iveco, the truck manufacturers, New Holland Agriculture, producing agricultural machines, and of course FPT, our FPT Industrial, our engines manufacturers brand. Just let me explain how we develop our technological roadmap. The way how we develop our technological roadmap is based on the analysis of key megatrends. In the last 10 years, the most influential megatrends, in our opinion, that have influenced our lives actually are the climate change, the food scarcity, and the growing population. Based on these 3 megatrends, among others, of course, we let emerge the great potential of natural gas and biomethane in transport and in agriculture, because of obvious reasons. So alternative fuels like natural gas and biomethane could help the fight against climate change, they could actually help the agricultural process and put in place a real circular economy that we are urging all stakeholders to be involved in, and certainly is an element that could contribute to reduce the food scarcity in the world related to the growing population in all regions of the world. We started our production of engine running on natural gas in 1997, and of course it was a niche production. Now we can see kind of 50,000 engines run on natural gas and biomethane all around the world. We were the only one producing trucks running on natural gas and biomethane. Now we see actually market share growing and growing, touching percentage that we could never imagine before. So we are really proud of the choice we made based on these key mega trend. And I pick what has been said by Renault about the need of an harmonization of the incentivization and for the end customer in terms of vehicles running on CNG and LNG. But we are glad to see across Europe more and more involvement of some member states in supporting natural gas and biomethane in their transport policy. We see Italy actually providing support to end customers. We see Spain also providing some support, and other, indirect, I would say, method of support like the MAUT in Germany are pretty much supporting this market, reducing the impact of the transport sector in the countries where these incentives are applied. Of course, what is a real added value on top of that of natural gas is the fact that natural gas is a bridge to the use of biomethane, and we see all around Europe more and more plans, national plans for the deployment of the biomethane ecosystem that will allow end of customer to run really at their zero emissions. I was mentioning New Holland agriculture because I'm also glad and proud to share with you the fact that by half of 2021, several countries in Europe, like Germany, France, Italy, and Benelux, will see tractor running on natural gas and biomethane produced by the farms themselves, running physically on the fields. And this is actually a part of our circular economy strategy, putting into the market tractor running with fuels produced from scrap coming from the agricultural waste.
Michele, I would like to lead over. Please allow me. I would like to lead over now to Dr. Bothe, and then would like to start the discussion, if you allow.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
I thank you. I thank you as well. And now Dr. David Bothe, he's from Frontier Economics, and he also developed the proposal for a crediting scheme. Please, David, please introduce yourself shortly, and then we start the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jens, for the invitation. And also, I think I can make it short because you have already seen what Ember and Matthias presented, and that's exactly the kind of work we're providing. So Frontier is an economic consultancy, and I think that's important to note that our role in this whole debate of defossilization of transport is just one of an economic advisor. We don't have any own stake in this debate. We are not producing or selling any vehicles or energy or have any affiliation. In fact, we are 100% owned by all our employees, and I think that's what we're really proud on, is this kind of independency. What we do is we bring our energy and transport sector expertise to the debate, but particularly we care, as economists, we care about economics. And that is really bringing down carbon emissions as quickly and cost effective as possible. Climate change is just a topic too important and too big that we definitely cannot afford of losing either time or make it more expensive than it's going to be in any way. And I think that's our main motivation to contribute with this economic thinking to the debate. And in this role, we are working for all kind of actors. We work for governmental organizations like the Commission itself, for national ministries. For example, we work currently in Germany on the development of a fast charging network for electrification. We do a lot of strategic projects for individual companies, OEMs, energy companies, suppliers. We work for associations, just as NGVA, and also for environmental NGOs. And I think that gives us a quite good 360-degree view on the topics, knowing the position from all of the stakeholders, and then itself that helps us to as economists to understand how market and competition will evolve and how we can reach this objective of making climate protection as efficient as possible. And all this debate is a lot about very detailed topics, but I think there are two big topics from an economic point of view with regard to defossilizing road transport, which are more or less like the red line through all of our projects. The one is you really have to zoom out and look at the big picture. So don't let any narrow focus like an isolated view on tailpipe emissions or individual sector targets distort our technology choice. You have to look, and that has been proven, I think, in our work for NGVA as well, we have to look at least well to wheel. In the end, you have to do a life cycle view, because at the end of the day, climate doesn't really care about where, when, or by whom any emissions occur. It's just the accumulated amount of CO2 and greenhouse gases we emit. And in this regard, we should really address this as a holistic systemic problem, and any individual target, individual threshold for sectors or actors are really counterproductive, because it incentivizes a thinking of, okay, if I can shift these emissions along in the value chain, then it's out of my responsibility, and then somebody else has to take care of it. And that's completely rational. But at the end of the day, we see a lot of reactions in the sector to this kind of incentives, which cost a lot of money, cause a lot of distortions, and at the end of the day, don't really deliver any meaningful CO2 emission reductions, because then they are just occurring in the production of vehicles or in the energy sector at the other point, and that doesn't really help. So we have to create an incentive regime which brings everybody on the table and let everybody decide what's the overall best strategy to deliver mobility defossilized. And so that's one big topic, look at the big picture. And the second one is belief in technology competition. And that has been addressed already from other speakers here today. I think it's just no option to have a debate today and cherry pick the one technology which is going to deliver the defossilized mobility up to 2050. We simply don't know. We have a lot of uncertainties. Many of these technologies are still under preparation. We simply don't know what will be available in 10, 20 years. And therefore, we have to go all in and really activate all potentials which we have to contribute to this big task of bringing down greenhouse gas emissions in the transport sector. And therefore, we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket and risk of running into a dead end, but rather keep it as broad as possible, keep options open, and let technologies compete with each other. And then from an economic point of view, that seems to be the most robust strategy to make sure that we really meet our targets in the mid and in the long term. And the regulatory framework has to create this level playing field for such a competition.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David. This leads me to my first question, and the question reflects also what I read here, what questions the audience is addressing. My question goes to Claus Sauter. Whenever we discuss biomethane, then we are asked, well, how much can the contribution be to the transportation sector? How big is the production capacity? What's your contribution? And the second point is that is also addressed here. Isn't it better to use this biomethane in other sectors? What's your view on this?
Okay. First of all, I want to thank David for his approach. Yes, we should find the most economical way, and this is also my saying that I focus on the lowest cost of decarbonization. So first of all, if we are using the straw in Europe, we are able to decarbonize all of the heavy and medium duty vehicles easily, because as I said, 80% of the straw, and in Eastern Europe even more, is not used yet. The farmers leave it on the field and it's digesting there. Where, you know, we have a broad biogas industry in Germany, approximately 9,000 plants, and 95% are producing electricity. But the price to make electricity from biogas is very expensive. We're talking about 16 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And I think their solar and wind is much cheaper. So now to go to the transport sector, and our focus is mainly the heavy duty transport, where electrification from our point of view is more expensive anyway. We need a lot of investment in infrastructure, and to do it with the new vehicles, the person from Iveco told it already. They were the first. Iveco was the first company who brought the natural gas truck to the European market. A few months later, Scania, and recently Volvo. So we have the trucks. The infrastructure is growing, and finally, Jens, you mentioned that we are also in the US market active, and the development what we see there is also going clearly to more natural gas trucks, heavy trucks, and this development there is accelerating. And just something about the costs. At a price of $75 per barrel of crude oil, we are competitive with our CO2 saving biomethane. And as I said, our contribution is negative. We avoid emissions in the agriculture sector, and this is the approach from David. So finally, we are negative. We are taking out CO2 of the atmosphere using the nature.
Yeah. This is obviously not understood by all our viewers here on the internet. We have to address this. I don't have the time to ask the question, but I would like to get your view, Mats, on this topic. What should legislation do? Should we incentivize somehow renewable fuel? What's your view on this? What's your approach in Brussels and that of your administrations in Helsinki, or in you are in Sweden, I know.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we think really that the renewable fuels should be taken into account, and we need to include them in this CO2 legislation that is now up for review. The legislation for passenger car was sent out for a public consultation, and there was a question there if mechanisms should be introduced that takes into account renewable fuels and low carbon fuels. And over 1,000 responses, and out of those responses, 70% answered that this is really important. So we think that this will also help to create the sort of the awareness at DG Klima and other places that this is an important topic. And I think the model developed by Frontier Economics, the crediting system, is a good example of how we can start to take renewable fuels into account. And that's something that we at Neste feel is really important and really are working on to promote.
Okay, this is pretty impressive, 70%, and this is a message we could also address, or we would like to ask Søren to take care about this, that the feedback was really positive regarding these questions. I learned this as well. And there's a question coming up regarding Groupe Renault. And some of the audience would like to have a closer view or some insights what Renault is trying to do, also in regard to the upcoming legislation modification in Brussels. Catherine, can you give us a little more insight?
So the question is about all kind of regulation.
No, the question is mainly on how to include renewable fuels into the CO2 emission legislation. What's your position on this?
So as I show you, we have communicated with a clear commitment and target for the well-to-wheel and globally for the carbon footprint. So it means that in our objective, we will have to work on the usage. It means on the CAFE, what we call the CAFE, emission during the usage, the tongue-to-wheel. But we will also have to work on the other part of the value chain. So it's clear that for us, any kind of support that will help to decarbonize the production phase and the well-to-tank will help to go to and to reach this objective. Right now, there are already some regulations that integrate, for example, LCA philosophy or rationale, like, for example, the RED, Renewable Energy Directive, which integrate some threshold linked to the, it's not LCA, but it's clearly close to LCA. And we hear now about a great increase in terms of target. This will increase the part of decarbonized fuel and energy in transport. Concerning the current negotiation by 2030, that you know that when you mentioned minus 55% in terms of CO2 reduction compared to 1990, it means that we expect in our side a strong revision for the regulation concerning the CAFE, so tongue-to-wheel, from 37%. So we expect more than 60% in terms of revision, 60% of decrease during usage phase in 2030 compared to 2021. So this is the first point. There are more and more discussion about how to take into account the whole value chain and even how to take into account the LCA. Our position is to say that in the midterm and long term, it's clear that LCA might be used, for example, to compare the different kind of solution and powertrain, including well-to-wheel, to compare what is the best solution concerning, for example, a light commercial vehicle and some specific usage. So it might be an additional tool to give some insight on what is the best solution. So this is our vision. If I talk about CO2 regulation, and again, I'm not going. There is also pollutant emission, which is very important. Maybe I can add one thing. We didn't talk about announcement concerning the ban. You know that there are more and more announcements in Europe. Ban. So it's very different. Sometimes politicians talk here. Talk about diesel ban or ICE ban or fossil fuels, so it's very different. Sometimes we hear about ICE ban, sometimes diesel ban, sometimes fossil fuels.
Yep.
So we have to be careful about that because again the definition is not so clear. So it means that maybe there is some we can open the door for some flexibility. But if we talk about ban emission, ICE ban is ICE ban. It means that it will decrease the level of opportunity to develop new kind of technology. So we work on that in order to integrate what we can, what we hear, because there are more and more stakeholders, and region, city are key stakeholders now in all this discussion. So it's very important to keep in mind all these new announcements, just to be sure that we are in line in terms of trajectory.
Yeah. From my perspective, it's we shouldn't take everything as granted. What's being said in all political fields, and on the other hand, we have a discovery plan for Europe due to the Corona crisis. And now I would like to address a question to Michele Ziosi. Because how do you see the connection between a recovery plan and amount you have got or money you have got from Brussels and the technology that should be used and the decarbonization of, for example, the heavy truck sector? What's your view on this?
Thank you very much, Jens, for your question. So some of recovery plans have been submitted to Brussels. Few in the last days. Let me actually further elaborate about one of the plan I know the most, the Italian one. And I really actually appreciate the fact that the Italian government really put a lot of effort in recognizing the role of natural gas and biomethane. Just to give you an example, if I recall well, actually the numbers over there, but actually in terms of renewal of the public transportation fleet, the investment foreseen is about 2 billion of new vehicles, and among of these vehicles, also CNG vehicles will be actually incentivized. Other numbers very important for the sector are certainly almost 2 billion euro for the deployment of the biomethane ecosystem. We are talking about the conversion of the old biogas plant into plant producing biomethane, and also investment for new plant of production of biomethane. Worth mentioning also kind of 4,000 institutional vehicles for firefighting brigade that will be not only running on electrical powertrain but also on CNG. And if I may link, because we are running out of time, to what have been said by the colleague from Neste, I also appreciate also the intervention of the Italian government and other member states into the public consultation on CO2 regulation for cars and vans, where, as have been said, 70% of the response have been positive in the sense of supporting a methodology to account the fleet target, the positive contribution of renewable fuels into the fleet target. And I think, I'm quite sure, since the dialogue with the European Commission is always so open, I would say that actually the claim of the civil societies, NGO industry should be actually considered, not only for cars and vans, of course, but also for the further revision in 2022 of heavy duty vehicles. Yeah. So to answer your question, to close, I would say that I really see a good effort from member states in terms of recovery plan as far as CNGs and biomethane is concerned. I'm really looking forward to seeing other plans coming from other member states in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Michele. And I would like to address my last question to David Bothe, because we discussed your study, and you prepared the study, and previously you also developed this crediting scheme that can help to establish a regulation that would enable a speed up of CO2 emission reduction. What would be your recommendation? You have learned now everything. You're in a neutral position. You developed a methodology. What would be, if a politician would ask you, what would be your recommendation to Brussels? Totally neutral.
I think it's built on what has been just said by all the others. We just learned in this study and several other studies that there are really exciting opportunities out there to bring down emissions in the transport sector, and and most of them require a change as in the provision of the energy, more upstream, as well as a change, slightly more in the vehicles, and even maybe some in the use pattern and the application. So that's an integrated chain which where every element has to link it to each other. And if we can establish an regulatory regime which incentivizes this cooperation along the value chain, then there are huge opportunities out there to deliver decarbonized mobility. The challenge is that currently we treat each element in this chain very separately, and there's no incentive for interlinkage. And that's exactly where our proposal comes into. By crediting system, it would be a first step to get the chain elements interlinked to each other. And then, of course, there's plenty way further to go down the route of life cycle treatment, but I think that would be a first step.
Excellent. As we are running out of time, I would like to make a short summary. And from my perspective, we learned from Søren Gaarde that there are positions in the politicians or in politics that promote the let me say a variety of solutions, and would not like to be focused on just one single solution. Obviously, there's also a will to enable competition, which is, from my perspective, also really necessary. Technological competition. We learned that really also job creation by building up a by biofuels and by biomethane, the creation of jobs right after the corona crisis is possible, and the resources are really huge. I did not see this chart so far from Neste, and this was really impressive. And I think in total, we should go forward and emphasize our activities and our communication into the direction of the European Commission in order to enable this, let me say, colorful landscape for propulsion systems. Now we come to an end. I have to thank you very much. I have to thank the participants. I have to thank the audience for their patience and for their contribution. I have to thank you very much for taking part in this webinar. I would like to continue this format, and today a special thank goes also to my team in Brussels that supported me well, and a special thanks to Robin Herman, who in spite of something he had an accident with his bicycle. We could do this web conference. Many thanks for your support. The bell is ringing already. Thank you for now, and hope to see you soon in our next discussion. Thank you.